Hello boys and girls, today we're going to be talking about an advanced strategy of how to obtain your Shaper Orbs in solo self-found. You can obviously use this strategy also in the Trade League, however it is kind of not needed because for the most part, unless you are first, you can simply buy the shape maps that we're going to be needing. So the main way that people acquire their Shaper Orbs is through simply running their Atlas, getting their Elder Influence, but you run into certain problems when you are running SSF. For instance, if this were to be an SSF Atlas, you can see that I've got a villa here. How this happened? So I was trying to get my Shaper Orbs, therefore I ran my Wasteland. Then I progressed to a factory to get my tier 6 Shaper Orb, and then I progressed to a villa to get my tier 7 Shaper Orb. The main issue with this is that, as you will quickly notice in SSF, you have to complete these maps under Elder Influence to be able to acquire the Shaper Orb. And completing maps in SSF is quite difficult because to uncomplete them to only be able to drop your shaped maps that you want to run, you have to remove them from your Atlas, and to do that you have to use Master Sextants that are very difficult to obtain, and for the most part Sextants are super important because Apprentice Sextants and Journeyman and Master Sextants simply allow you to drop so many more maps, and then they allow you to sustain your map base a lot better. Therefore you really don't want to be using them for acquiring, for removing maps from your Atlas, right? So instead of being stuck with a villa the way I am, you can use another strategy, which I will be showcasing right here. So I currently have all the Shaper Orbs all the way up until tier 8 Shaper Orb. And now I am trying to acquire a tier 9 Shaper Orb, which normally would be a tier 14 red map. Again, something that we would have to remove with a Shaper Orb. However, like mentioned, there is a way to go around this, and that way is to vendor 3 of your previous tier shaped maps into a shaped map of the higher tier. Which means that if I want my tier 14 Shaper Orb, I would have to take my previous tier map, which in my case is a shaped armory, vendor 3 of these maps, which would in result turn into a shaped vault, which is the next tier that we need, our tier 9 Shaper Orb, which is a tier 14 map. And you can see that we have a shaped vault map and we have a regular vault map. We also have our Elder Influence, and despite the fact that there is no blue circle displaying that this map will drop a Shaper Orb, it will drop a Shaper Orb. As you can see, this is an easy way to skip the entire process of having to remove your red maps, or any maps really that you want, from your Atlas, depending on what kind of tier you're trying to run. What you can also do instead of vendoring your maps 3 for the one of the higher tier is instead Volorb your maps to hopefully acquire a +1 level map. Worst case scenario, if nothing happens with your maps, they still remain the exact same shaped map, and that way you can still take 3 of them and turn them in for a +1 at the vendor. However, there is a problem with this because since recently, if you Volorb a map, it doesn't necessarily go +1 to the only map that you can vendor to. It can instead go +1 to any of the maps that the original map is adjacent to. Which essentially means that, for instance, if we were to be looking at Academy, there are 2 tier 7 maps around it, which means that an Academy, when it goes +1 level, it can turn into either Tribunal or Gardens. So that is definitely something you want to keep in mind when trying to acquire your higher tier maps, because it essentially lowers the probability of getting it by 50%. However, there is a little bit of a trick and a little bit of a cost to this instead. Let's say that you are trying to acquire your tier 7 Shaper Orb and you have your shaped Underground Sea. So you've got your tier 6 Shaper Orb, you're trying to get your tier 7 Shaper Orb. Maps vendor only in a very specific order, which means that a shaped Underground Sea, or any Underground Sea, will vendor into any underground river or a shaped underground river. But you don't want your tier 12 map to be a underground river. And that's pretty much the cost. That if you were to now get your shaped underground river, kill the boss, acquire your tier 7 Shaper Orb, but you don't want underground river to be your tier 12 shape map, you're gonna have to remove it. The shaped orb will stay and you can always acquire it from Zana. However, the map itself you have to remove. You can do so by taking 20 chisels and 5 regret orbs, which will grant you now an unshaping orb, which allows you to downgrade a map on the Atlas. And that way you can downgrade any map, and by doing so, Zana will offer the new orb, which you can use on any map tier that you want to shape from there on. So in our case, now that we have unshaped our underground river, we can instead shape our ramparts, vendor 3 ramparts, acquire the armory map, get our Shaper Orb, vendor 3 armories, acquire the shaped vault map as we've displayed before. Hopefully you guys found this useful, and if you like these sort of videos explaining the Atlas or any other maybe a little bit more in-depth SSF mechanic, be sure to let me know in the comment section below, and hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!